Can you guys see the screen okay?
Kind of like this one.
All right, so this will be a little bit different worship for you guys probably, because it was a lot different from me, but this is a dialectic worship. I want you guys to talk with each other. I want to work on getting us together where you're living into your faith. You're living into understanding what it means to be faithful servants of God. So as we go into this worship time, it's all about actually walking into this concept of our faith journeys. So events that we have coming up, guys. We got the Chapel Chat, which is the Chapel Chat is actually going to change from 11 to 12. It's at Hughes Library. It's going to change to 3 to 4 in the afternoon at the library. It's essentially there. If you guys got questions, any thoughts, you want to come talk, you're kind of wrestling with things or whatever, come by and sit and chat for a while. All questions are welcome. We have experience worship next Thursday. And then Saturday evening, if you want an alternative to maybe partying, we have the sobriety dinner at the Weeks House. You can RSVP at on my email. And that's 7 to 8. So the quote for worship, this man here, his name is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Anybody know who Dietrich Bonhoeffer is here? Who's Dietrich Bonhoeffer?
I don't know exactly. It was during World War II, and he was like, I don't know if he was a pastor or priest or anything, but he got killed for conspiring in a group that was trying to take down the Nazis in a way.
Yeah, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran pastor that actually joined the Abwehr, which was a group that was working to assassinate Hitler. And one of the interesting things about Bonhoeffer is that the beautiful piece of the puzzle for him was that he was a pacifist. And so he wrestled with his faith his whole life because he was part of this, because he saw Hitler as being too great of an evil. So, but he says this, he says, judging others makes us blind, whereas love is illuminating. Judging others, we blind ourselves to our own evil and to the grace which others are just as entitled to as we are. And that's from the Cost of Discipleship. Because when we judge others, what happens when we judge others? Alejandro.
Go.
When we judge others, what are some things that happen? If you judge somebody else, what are you doing immediately to that other person? Are you welcoming them? No. So are you shutting them out? Or are you even pushing them out, right? You're putting them in the margins, aren't you? And so our faith lives are challenged because we are called to be that good news, the love. And that's what Bonhoeffer hits on. So, call to worship. Nathaniel's going to lead us. You guys can, Nathaniel will read the white, we read the yellow.
Every generous act of giving is a tribute to God's love for us.
Lord, let us be people of generous and abundant gifts for others.
Be ready to listen and slow to react in anger.
Lord, prepare us to be peaceful people.
Keep your hearts and spirits ready to serve the Lord.
Lord, open our hearts to hear and respond to your words of life and ministries of hope and peace. Amen. So, here's some questions I want us to think about, and we're kind of going to discuss them. And we're a small enough group that we'll kind of bounce them a little bit, and I want you guys to talk. So, those of you who have been part of this before, help me out a little bit. So, what are some important elements of your spiritual journey, of your personal spiritual journey? What are some things or characteristics that you think are extremely important to that journey? Community. Absolutely, I think that's a great one. What else? What are other characteristics for us?
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love. What else, guys, comes to mind? Commitment. That's fantastic. And commitment with discipline, I think, also, right? I like that. Thanks. What else? Ryan? Welcoming. Hospitality. What else are some traits? Can you think of? Support. Support from others. Anything else, guys?
I guess like along with commitment is like continuity, like, cause you're not gonna always be able to stay committed and disciplined with everything, like you're gonna fall, and sort of just getting back up on that train.
So think about how that's actually a great thing, because it ties with almost everything that we talked about, right? Because you have community, right? And you have continuity, you need continuity, because if we fall, is it easier to get up by yourself or if somebody helps you up? Which one's easier? Sometimes you need a hand, right? So that's a huge piece of our faith journeys, because we do faith in isolation? Is it just our faith life, or is it a we? Anna? It is, it's a we, because we care about each other, right? So, what is more important in your faith journey? Is your faith dictated by a rule book, or is it more important to be in a relationship? What do you guys think? Or what have you thought when it comes to faith? There's no wrong answers. Or, better yet, how have you understood faith in the past, or experienced it in the past? Has it been more important to be doctrinal or rule driven, or is it about relationship? B?
I think it's more important to be in a relationship with others.
I think so too. But do you guys know churches and with faiths that it's more important to be following the rules? You ever felt like that?
Our church.
Our church?
Yeah, we both go Catholic.
Now, there's strands of that are not like that. So, and we'll talk about that more later as we get going. But it is, relationships so important, right? Let's shut this door. I know there's other classes going on. Relationships are extremely important. So relationships, are they just relationships between you and God? Is that the only relationship we worry about in our faith journey? No? Yes? No? Shane?
Well, for me, kind of, because I feel like if I'm right with God, I'm right with everyone else as well.
That's a good answer. So, and if you're right with God, right? So let me ask you this, guys. What do you think of when you hear in right relationship? Is there an us and them, or is it just us in creation? What do you guys think?
Us.
It's us, right? That's a great thing. So, as we go through this, I want you to think about some questions and we'll talk about it, right? So Anna's going to lead us in prayer, and then when she finishes, we're going to say the Lord's Prayer together, and it's going to come up on the screen, guys, so you can read it.
Almighty and loving God, today we gather with one another and ask that you would walk with us through our times of trouble. Empower us to feel your presence in times of need and celebrate with us in times of joy. Let us never tire of being witness of your good news. We ask that you would guide us to be wise in our decisions and actions, willing to seek peace over violence. Inspire us to empathize with others and to seek connections over division. Let us bring humble hearts to every day so that we are always willing to learn and grow with one another. We lift those who are struggling to find places of rest and ask that you let them know that in their struggles you are present walking with them. All of this we ask in those words that you have taught us to pray. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive our trespasses, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Right?
Our scriptures come from Mark 7, verses 1 through 8, 14 through 15, and 21 through 23. Now when the Pharisees and some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem gathered around him, they noticed that some of his disciples were eating with defiled hands, that is, without washing them. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they thoroughly wash their hands, thus observing the tradition of the elders. And they do not eat anything from the market unless they wash. There are also many other traditions that they observe, the washing of cups and pots and bronze kettles and beds. So the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat with defiled hands? He said to them, Isaiah prophesies rightly about you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines. You abandon the commandment of God and hold to human tradition. Then he called the crowd again and said to them, listen to me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside a person that by going in can defile, but the things that come out are what defile. For it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, debauchery, envy, slander, pride, folly. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person.
So, when you guys hear that text, one of the interesting things that always comes to my mind is the Pharisees want to dictate what the rules are, right? They want Jesus' followers to follow all the dietary commands. And I know a lot of people get hung up on the last verse with all the wonderful sins of each other, the adultery, avarice, all that good stuff. But think about it in the piece beforehand, that what Jesus is hammering. And I love this quote from Desmond Tutu. Desmond Tutu is the Archbishop of South America. South Africa. Did I say South America? South Africa, sorry. It's the first week back, guys. So he wrote this, and it's one of my favorite quotes of his. When people were hungry, Jesus didn't say, now is that political or social? He said, I feed you. Because the good news to a hungry person is the bread. The good news is that we don't have to follow these dietary laws. What we have to do is actually change our inner thoughts, our whole understanding of who we are. And that's what the food for the hungry is all about. It's connecting with people like that. So, good catch, Seamus. Thank you for that. So, now, you guys are going to watch one of my favorite theologians. This is Father Greg Boyle. And I'm going to show a video. Now, Father Boyle is the founding father of Homeboy Industry. Homeboy Industry is the largest gang re-entry program in the world. Over 3,000 gang members go through Homeboy Industry a year and are re-entered into society. Their enemies work with enemies. Their compassion wins out. So I want you to listen to what Father Boyle has to say and think about the text that we just read and see how that moves you.
There was no homie that found more job opportunities than this kid, Caesar, who I knew growing up in the projects. Got into a gang, a smart kid, but he would always got into trouble and in and out of being locked up. I'd find him a job in the private sector in one of our businesses, but he'd always gravitate back to vague criminality. So this one time he finished a 4-month stretch in county jail probation violation. There he is sitting in front of me, and he says what gang members often say, this time it'll be different. I go, So I pick up the phone, I call a friend of mine who runs a vending machine company. He says, tell Caesar you can start tomorrow. And 2 weeks later, there he is again, sitting in front of my desk, and I go, híjole, madre santa, here we go. But this time he pulls out of his pocket his very first paycheck, and he says, damn, gee, this paycheck makes me feel proper. I mean, my mom, she's proud of me, and my kids, they're not ashamed of me. And you know who I have to thank for this job. And I said, well, gosh, who? And he looked at me strangely and he said, well, God, of course. Oh, sure, no, that's right. That's right, that would be God, yeah. He said, you thought I was gonna say you. I said, no, gosh, God's number one, yeah. He said, you are so lucky we're not living in them Genesis days. And I'm sorry, them Genesis days? He goes, yeah, because God would have had struck down your ass already by now. People always ask me about enemies working together, and it certainly is dicey, at least initially. And they always do the same thing. They think for a long ass time, and then they say, okay, I'll work with them, but I'm not going to talk to them. So I had this kid named Youngster, that was his gang name, a little tiny guy, and everybody called him Youngster, and I thought he was ready. So I bring him to Homeboy Silkscreen, So I'm introducing him to his coworkers, and I'm watching him as he shakes hands with every single one, even enemies. He looks them straight in the eye. And I think, wow, this is great. And until he gets to the last guy, a guy who seems to be wanting to avoid this encounter altogether, kid everybody called Puppet. And when Puppet and Youngster are in each other's vicinity, they mumble something, they stare at their shoes, they don't shake hands. Well, I know they're enemies because I know what gangs they're from, but he just finished shaking hands with other enemies. This is a hatred that's really quite personal and deep, beyond which neither of them think they can really get past. Well, about 6 months later, Puppet goes to this store some distance from his home. And on the way home, he decides to take a shortcut, so he dodges into an alley. And because he's taken this detour suddenly, unexpectedly, he's surrounded by 10 members of a rival gang, 10 against 1, and they beat him badly. He falls to the ground. Somebody finds his body and takes him to White Memorial Hospital, where he's declared effectively brain dead. But in the first 24 hours while he was lying there beaten in the hospital, I was alone in my office, 8:30 at night, and the phone rings, and it's Youngster, Puppet's coworker from the silk screen. And he says, "Hey, that's messed up about what happened to Puppet." I said, "Yeah, it is." And then with a certain kind of eagerness even, he said, "Is there anything I could do? Can I give him my blood?" And we both fall silent under the weight of it, until finally he breaks the silence, choking back his tears, and he says with great deliberation, "He was not my enemy. He was my friend. We worked together." Now, can I say that always happens at Monmouth Industries? Yes. Any exceptions? Not a single one. I think Mother Teresa diagnosed the world's ills correctly when she suggested that the problem in the world is that we've forgotten that we belong to each other. How do we stand against forgetting that? How can we obliterate once and for all this illusion that we are separate? Or there's an idea that's taken root in the world, and it's at the root of all that's wrong with it, and the idea would be this: that there just might be lives out there that matter less than other lives. How do we collectively stand against that idea? And I suspect if kinship was our goal, we would no longer be promoting justice, we'd be celebrating it. You know, folks will say no justice, no peace, but the truth is no kinship, no justice. No kinship, no peace, no matter how singularly focused you may well be. We belong to each other, and there are no exceptions to that.
So, powerful video. Why? So as we listen to the words from Mark, from the Gospel of Mark, and how the Pharisees want to separate themselves from the followers of Jesus because of rules. And what's so important and so connected, and why I showed that video, is because of that final piece that Father Boyle talks about. That when we get down to brass tacks as our faith, it's about kinship. It's about recognizing the humanity in our fellow brothers and sisters, no matter where they are or who they are. Can you imagine what somebody would have said when Youngster, the kid that he talked about, came in front of them? And you got to figure that the picture at the beginning of the video of the gang member that you saw with the tattoos on his face and everything, I think that was Youngster. And can you imagine what would holier than thou people think of Youngster with all those tattoos on his face? What are some things you think would come? Do you think they think, God, there's a Christ-infused man? Do you think that would be it? Or do you think it'd be more like, oh, he's one of them, right? But the reality is, the youngster is the example of the body of Christ, the hands and feet. When he calls Father and he says, he was not my enemy, he's my friend. You see, that's the power of theology. That's the power of living as Christ calls us to live. You know, too often we sit in church or we sit and we do our Sunday thing, and you punch your clock and you say, okay, I've gone to church, and it doesn't matter. But it does. Especially in the times you guys are living in right now. You guys are living in times that are completely filled with division. It's us and them stuff all over the place. I woke up today, like I do every morning, and I go to the news, and I read the news, and I read what's happening in the world. And right now, we live in this society that wants to separate us, wants to judge us as this or that, or this or that. Our faith in God can build the bridges, to build connections, to walk with. So this is one of Father Boyle's famous quotes. It says, "See how they love one another, not a bad gauge of health. There was no needy person in the book of Acts." This is what he's talking about here. "A better metric would be hard to find. There is one line that stopped him in his tracks, awe came upon everyone. It would seem that quite possibly the ultimate measure of health in any community might well reside in our ability to stand in awe of what the folks have to carry, rather than the judgment of how they carry it." Guys, that's what faith leads to, is when we recognize that we love each other enough to be in awe of how we carry each other's burdens, rather than in judgment of what somebody's done, ate, acted like. If we stand in awe and we walk with people, we transform. So, Emily Dickinson, the poet, says this: "Who has not found the heaven below will fail it above, for the angels rent the house next to ours, wherever we remove." It's one of my favorite Emily Dickinson poems. So, what do you think that means with the text we live in, that we're working with today? This line here: "If we can't find the heaven below, we'll fail it above." What do you think Emily Dickinson's saying there? Didn't know you were going to come to a literature class, do you? Here on earth, have you ever thought about it? That God is here on earth, right? So why do we spend so much darn time, I cleaned my language up, see, thinking about heaven way out here? I think part of the reason why we do that, we think of heaven versus the heaven here, the body of Christ, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, is because if heaven's out here, are we really responsible about what's here? We aren't. So the challenge for us is to recognize that it's our responsibility to live our faith. And to do so, we got to listen to each other, walk with each other, grow with each other, recognize that not a one of us is above the other. Has any of you guys walked into a room where you felt like you were the bottom rung in the room? Right? How does that make you feel? Anybody want to share?
Very nervous.
Nervous. Why are you nervous?
Because everybody else has more experience and is more knowledgeable,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just kind of sitting there going, I don't know anything.
Mm-hmm. So, how does anybody else feel?
I get kind of angry. I'm just like, you think you're better than me, dog?
So you think about that, Seamus. That's actually a great piece, right? You think you're better than me. Who's thinking they're better than who? In that concept, does he know for sure that somebody thinks they're better than him?
No, I'm not for sure. But I mean, I just vibe.
But you get the vibe, right? Right? Folks, I'm a drunk, right? I'm a drunk. Not a recovering drunk. Let's make that statement straight, right? And there are people in my life that would look and say, when I say Hey, I'm Reverend Dr. John Huxtable. There are people that I knew way back when that would look at me and you know what they'd say? There ain't no fucking way. And that's exactly what they say. And don't worry, God's not mad at me for saying that. You know why they say it? Seamus? They think they're better, right?
Yeah.
Because we have rules, right? Church folk act like this, this, and this, right? I'm here to tell you guys that I'm a little bit of an odd duck pastor because of what I've gone through. But the other thing is, because the grace of God brought me here. You know what I mean? And because of that grace, we can't look away because all of you are gifts from God. You are the us. We are an us together. So when we celebrate that, then we start to live our faith. We start to truly engage in it. Then we become the hands and feet of Teresa, that Teresa Avila calls the hands and feet of Christ. Bonhoeffer again. Once again, we talked about this a little bit. Faith, a relationship with God, Christ, and creation, not a rule book. When Christ bids for you to come, he calls him to come and die. The cross is not a terrible end of a pious, happy life. Instead, it's the beginning of community. Community with Christ and with each other. How cool is that? You're never alone if you live into this understanding of God being present with all of us. This is the greatest gift we can give each other, is understanding that God is in each of us. Mother Teresa, before you left her the building for the day, all the people who are serving, all the sisters and everything, go by a sign that says, make sure you see Christ in everybody you serve today. I love that image. Make sure you see Christ in everybody you come across today. How many of you have ran into me across campus and I'd like to talk to you out of the blue? Anybody? Made you talk to me, didn't I? You know why? Because I see Christ in all of you. You are a gift to everything. And I want you to celebrate it. Because that's when we get rid of the us and them stuff and we start to be just us. We start to build those bridges instead of continuing to build caverns. So, this is Nadia Bolz-Weber. She's a great theologian. Look her up. She's fantastic. I love this. She says, the kingdom of God is within each and every one of you. Wanting to be known, wanting to be expressed, wanting to be lived, and absolutely lighting up when it hears the real thing. Within it is your beauty, your value, your dignity, and it is absolutely nothing to do with you being right, or making your point, or saving yourself, or winning, or losing. It is absolutely to do with you are part of God's grace. You are worthy. That's the gift. That's the gift. Because we are community and connection. So we live into that by sharing our stories, walking with us, by not letting rule books get into the way. Now, we have one rule, right? What do you think the rule is to live in a faith community? What do you think the rule would be? Come on, it's called a golden rule. Anybody? Yeah.
Treat others how you want to be.
Here you go.
That one?
Yeah, that one.
Huh?
Treat others how you want to be.
There you go! Right?
Okay.
There it is.
Thanks for telling me.
I'm not going to ask you tough questions, guys, for the most part. That treat others as you wish to be treated. Care about each other, right? Have fun with each other. That's what this is all about. When you guys come to this experience worship, I want you to enjoy it. And I want you to have fun with it. I want you to challenge yourself to look at it deeper and bigger, right? What's one question you all have about your faith right now? Anybody want to ask? Just one question. I don't care what it is. This is me spontaneously doing something. You got something? All right. What is one thing you'd like me to talk about this year in your faith, or in this kind of worship? Okay, I'm going to challenge you guys all semester to work with this, right? Because I think it's cool. I want you guys to have a voice, because each of you matters. Yeah.
Maybe my own church back at home.
Mhm.
I was forced to serve,
Serve. Okay.
to be like at the altar.
Oh, altar boy.
Yeah.
Yep. I was an altar boy for a while too.
Right.
So what do you think about it?
How was it forced to do that?
Okay, so I can't say for sure, you know, but one of the things is the tradition of that is to get you involved in the church in another level, right?
Yeah.
So the connection, the hope is that you will connect and you'll go into a deeper understanding of the liturgical calendar, the liturgical aspect of the service.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, it's challenging.
All priests don't do that. I mean, I grew up Catholic too. I went to a Catholic school and everything. Many different Catholic churches, and they're not one is the same.
And that's it. There's very different strands of Catholicism too, right? That go on. When I grew up, it wasn't a choice. In fact, it was an honor for me when I started serving, right? I mean, you know, and that's it varies. But that's the cool thing, right? Is that we all have different churches. We all came from different spectrums, right? As far as things go. I'm a mutt when it comes down to it, guys. I was baptized Catholic, raised Catholic. Hardest conversation I ever had in my life was I told my grandmother I was leaving the Catholic Church. Now, you want to hear a funny story? You guys want to have some fun?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So I told my grandma I'm leaving the Catholic Church. My grandfather's response was, Coke, he likes girls too much. He can't be a priest. Swear to God, that was my grandpa's answer. So,
How old were you when you left the church?
22.
Okay.
So, actually, no, I was actually over 24. So I left the church there. I went on a journey when I was here as a student as well, trying to find my faith, where I wanted to go. Ended up in the Disciples of Christ Christian Church. Loved that place. I was ordained in that church. Came here and I transferred my ordination to the Presbyterian Church. There's greatness and amazing stuff in all denominations, guys. There's also stuff that's kind of screwy in all denominations too, right? This is the thing we just gotta be honest with each other about. But our faith lives, our stuff in here is all about us connecting on a deeper level and being better today than we were yesterday. And that means caring for creation, caring for each other and walking with each other. That's the profound nature of conquering that this and us and them kind of paradox. And that's what Jesus was getting at with Mark. The Pharisees wanted to continue to say, why do they do this? Because they're unclean, so they're less than us. They're unclean, they can't go into the temple. They're unclean, they can't worship. They're unclean, they're unworthy. And Jesus said, no, you're missing it. What matters is what's inside of each of us. And if we get to the point where inside of us we kind of conquer that us and them mentality, then the world can transform. If we actually think about the important stuff that Jesus talks a lot about, care for the poor, compassion for the wounded, loving our neighbors, truly loving our enemies, if we do that stuff, the world can be transformed. But if we continue to bicker, to say who's in and who's out, to divide us, we miss the beautiful gift that God has given us by being in community with each other. We miss it. I want you guys to be awed and just be ramped up by your faith, because it's an amazing gift to have. It's awesome to be able to walk in a faith community together with each other and share it. All right. So this is one of my favorite quotes. Sorry guys, I got quote happy with this. But this is Shane Claiborne. When we ask God to move a mountain, God's going to give you a shovel to move the mountain. We got to act. We got to be. So that's how we're going to end tonight. Is we got to be the people of faith that we're called to be, which means walking that path each and every morning, each and every day, being better today than you were yesterday. And here's the kicker, guys: when you fall, because you're going to fall at times, God gives you grace to get back up, to lift you up. And that grace is amazing. Amazing. It's not just a song. Take it and be awed by it. All right? All right. Let's close in prayer. Everybody do okay today? Look at that. We made it in time. So, I promise you, I try not to get you out here on time every week. So let's close in prayer, guys. Most glorious and loving God, we come to you today and we thank you for giving us this chance to worship together, this chance to be with each other, the chance to build community with each other, and to be awed by your grace. Let us walk out of here willing to be transformed by your Spirit, willing to be given the grace to touch the world with compassion. Let us seek to serve one another so that we will destroy the gaps that have been created. And let us always go forth willing to hear and be present with you and the Spirit. Go in peace, guys. Amen. Thank you guys for being here. Next Monday, Saturday night, 7 o'clock, now we're starting? 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. If you want to eat at the Weeks House, we're gonna have a sobriety dinner. So pizza and discussion. Let me know if you're gonna be there.